Now, across Texas, the issue is.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Texas, the issue is.
It is runoff time across the state of Texas. Early voting has ended and election day is on Tuesday, and you may have seen or heard former President Donald Trump's voice or image in multiple campaign ads. He has injected himself into a lot of the local races. I went one-on-one with the former president when he visited Dallas for the NRA convention.
I see more enthusiasm now from the voters, from the people that are going to be voting, than I ever saw in 2016 or 2020.
During his most recent visit to the Lone Star State, former President Donald Trump spoke to the NRA convention in Dallas. Before his speech, I went one-on-one with Mr. Trump. It's not common for former presidents to actively campaign in local races, but during the primary and now runoff, Trump has injected himself into multiple races.
Texas legislature candidates who have my complete and total endorsement.
Trump called out multiple Texas candidates who are hoping to win their runoff this Tuesday. But the candidate he talked about the most, David Covey, who was challenging House Speaker Dade Phelan.
We have to get your speaker out of there so that we can go into voter fraud.
There are no substantiated claims of widespread voter fraud in Texas or in other states. Phelan is taking heat for pushing through the impeachment of Attorney General Ken Paxton, a close friend of Trump. Phelan is also being accused by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and others for allegedly holding up Republican priority legislation, saying he is too close to Democrats. Trump and I talked about the 2024 election from a national perspective.
What do you think will be a defining factor in November for voters when they go to the polls?
Well, I think we have a lot of different. Number one, we have inflation. Number two, we have the economy, and they're sort of the same thing. And number three, we have a border that's so porous and so horrible.
On the border issue, Trump stuck to his campaign talking points, blaming the Biden administration and saying illegal immigration numbers were lower under his watch, which is true. But when asked what can be done to fix the current problem, Trump gave no concrete plan.
The jails are being emptied out into the United States.
What can be done domestically?
Well, you have to have a border again. We had the strongest border in history. Now we have the weakest border in history.
The latest Fox poll has Trump with a slim lead within the margin of error over President Biden. I asked him if he wins in November, would he add a Texan to his cabinet?
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is a personal friend of yours. Would you consider him for U.S. Attorney General?
I would, actually. He's very, very talented. I mean, we have a lot of people that want that one and will be very good at it, but he's a very talented guy. I fought for him when he had the difficulty, and we won. He had some people really after him, and I thought it was very unfair. He's been a very good attorney general.
The difficulty Trump describes could be the securities fraud charges against Paxton. That case is now closed after an agreement was made with the prosecutor. Paxton also survived an impeachment trial in the state Senate. Now, my word for this is uncharted. We can explain later. Rudy, what is your one word?
Stephen, after hearing that, I got to go with Animaniacs.
I remember that show. Okay, Greg, what about you?
Stephen, my word is a backhanded homage to our colleague, rudimentary.
Well, I'm pretty sure these guys have a lot more to discuss about the former president and the runoff elections after this break. The Fox Texas Trio is back to discuss my interview with former president and Republican nominee Donald Trump and a host of other topics. Rudy, there's a saying, politics is local. This year has been a little different, especially in Texas. Will the Trump factor be a deciding factor come Tuesday?
You know, Stephen, we're hearing a lot of outside voices like Donald Trump. It sounds like a old horror movie. You know, I hear voices, a lot of voices. You know, those voices both are trying, and both certainly are causing a lot of chaos. It's almost cartoon-like, which is why my word was Animaniacs. Throwback to that crazy cartoon show. Love that show. Right now, there are so many characters dropping into Texas politics, Republican and Democrat alike. It seems like several campaigns are being run by those cartoon Warner Brother siblings. You know, you just can't figure these guys out. But in reality, they're hardliners on the right and extreme progressives on the left that are trying to, what appears to be a burn it to the ground strategy, both sides. Now, I think after Tuesday, the final analysis will show that most of these runoffs were not decided by those endorsements from people like Donald Trump and Greg Abbott, but by low turnout and high turn-off caused by all the mudslinging. Steve?
Greg, this election is different, but will the outside voices overwhelm the people who actually are served in these districts for these races?
I think absolutely. I think if Speaker Phelan loses his seat, as many are predicting, the Trump intervention will have played a pivotal role. Let's face it, many of the folks voting in that part of Southeast Texas don't much care about the genuinely messy Republican intramural knife fighting at the state capitol. Their choices are pretty fundamental. Trump, with all his flaws, hands down over Biden, and if the former president says Phelan's part of the problem, that's all many need to hear. Never mind that Phelan passed an abortion ban, universal carry, and the biggest property tax rebate in U.S. history. If Trump brands him a rhino in 2024, the label is likely to stick in the Lone Star State, and that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think if Dade Phelan, I'll ask you guys, put you guys on the record in a minute, but if Phelan is ousted, then yeah, the narrative and what a rhino is, I think, changes here in the state of Texas. Now, Rudy, transitioning to the border, Trump said a lot of what you would expect him to have said in that interview, and parts that you did not hear in the interview about Venezuela and all of the sorts, but didn't offer a real plan. Now, granted, Democrats, someone could say Democrats aren't offering real plans either, but will the border still be a top of mind issue for people when they go to the polls in November?
You know, I think in Texas, Stephen, it certainly will. The new Texas Lyceum poll that came out last week points to that. Nationally, I think it's still inflation and the economy. Those are the big concerns, and the polls really pointing to that on the national level. But again, this presidential campaign is shaping up like a crazy cartoon. President Biden has one of the worst job approval ratings in history right now, worse than Nixon and Carter. Can you imagine that? Yet Donald Trump, according to most polls, is only tied with Biden, or has a small single-digit lead nationally. Of course, he's doing much better in Texas. Now, to quote the Animaniacs after a salty joke, good night, everybody.
Greg.
All right, well, you can't let 10 million people walk into the country without permission or vetting or tracking and not expect massive repercussions. I mean, we've reported how disturbing it is to independents and even a majority of Democrats. Now, that said, the American psyche is pretty whimsical these days, and November 5th is still 5+ months away. So assuming border crossings simmer down, it will be Team Trump's challenge to plaster the airwaves with images of what's taken place on Biden's watch. Remember the wall? Believe me, there are voters out there who once thought it was a preposterous, wasteful gimmick who don't think that way anymore.
Yeah, things have definitely changed. Now we're going to do some quick answers. Let's see, can we get quick answers from you guys? This question is to you both. Rudy, you first. Will Donald Trump, if he wins in November, name Kim Paxton as his AG?
Paxton has proven to be a good attack dog for the Republicans, especially their agenda, allowing hardliners on the right to ignore his misdeeds. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trump tries to nominate him. But the U.S. Senate is not the Texas Senate. A ham sandwich would have a better chance at confirmation in D.C.
Greg?
I agree completely with Rudy. No.
All right, and I gotta get you guys on the record before Tuesday on this. Will Speaker Dade Phelan keep his seat? Rudy, you first.
I think Greg and I are going to disagree with this a little bit. The team with a better turnout strategy wins. I'm going to be watching mail-in ballots.
Okay, Greg.
Rudy and Stephen, I'm afraid Phelan loses unless independents show up and Democrats cross over.
Yeah, I think Phelan may not be able to survive. We'll have to wait and see. To see this episode and any of our past ones, you can go to our station's YouTube channel.
Keep the conversation going by reaching out to us on social media.
Next week, another hot topic, same time, same place, and be sure to let us know what you think the issue is.